crunch, 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 crunch. This guy comes up. And he had already established himself that first day. He was a geek, nerd, wannabe idiot. Finally, he just blurted out, Mr. Smith, when are we going to do like the kick in doors and, like roll and get up and engage multiple targets and all, I mean, I think I think it's really important. And I remember Clint just like sighed and he looked at me and Clint kind of smiled. He says, I'll make you a deal. Let's just concentrate on learning how not to shoot yourself or your neighbor. And we'll worry about that other stuff later.
Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Podcast U.S., brought to you by gunsmagazine.com and sponsored by Tango Down. Hi there, I'm your host, Brent, and thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs, and we can even prove that as we talk about the interesting stuff and the interesting people who make up the world of shooting. And of course, the king of the interesting people is my co-host, Roy Huntington. Howdy there, Roy.
Now I'm embarrassed.
That's my job, to embarrass and humiliate people we bring on the podcast. But no, we've got another great show. But before we do that, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Tango Down.
Tango Down has been a trusted leader in firearms parts and accessories for more than 2 decades. Whether you're upgrading your everyday carry or finishing out your next rifle build, Tango Down has you covered. Their product line continues to grow with new releases coming in 2026. Visit tangodown.com to explore the full lineup and sign up for email updates so you don't miss what's next. Tango Down, combat gear without peer.
Well, Roy, this is a topic that we've kind of kicked around for a while, and I finally decided it's time to do it. And it's kind of an opinion thing, but I think some learning can occur for all parties involved. And we're going to talk about training. We often recommend to get professional firearms training, and most people understand that, and maybe not everybody can afford it, but most people understand at least the reason behind it. Occasionally you get those people going, well, trainers are just, you're just shilling for the training industry and trainers are jerks. And let's talk about that today. Both of us have trained folks. You've trained a lot more folks than I have, but I've done my share of it. And we're going to talk about it from the trainer side, from the student side, because both of us are eternal students, and just kind of analyze this whole idea of why would you need professional training in shooting. And I'll leave it at something we point out a lot, that shooting is a perishable skill. And just because you got training in the Army and basic 42 years ago, if you haven't shot since then, you probably suck at it. So it's like riding a bicycle. You'll pick it back up pretty quick. But if you haven't used that skill in a while, and especially if you haven't been trained on it, your skill level goes down over time. So, Roy, when you say gun training, what do you think of? That was a tired.
I know it's multidimensional. It's like, where do you start? But to me, a quick overview is, because this is what I've seen. I know this is what you've seen. I grew up hunting with my grandpa. I know about guns. Why would I go to a trainer? Because he wouldn't teach me anything I don't already know. Well, with rare exceptions, that they're exactly wrong. And those are the people who buy a Glock and load it and put it in their holster and never even shoot it and say, it's okay, I know about guns, right? Okay, so that's bad. We know that. The other ones that I particularly am amused by is you bump into some 80-year-old guy and he said, oh, I'm a certified firearms trainer. And I go, you are? Oh yeah. I was certified by the NRA in 1968, which can be as little as a 4-hour class in those days, right? And so, no, you're not a firearms trainer. And if you're listening and you want training, you shouldn't listen to those kind of people. I mean, yeah, go shooting, see what you have, but don't consider yourself to be a firearms, trainer, or to be someone who attended training. I mean, and then of course there's, all the regional gun shops that have ranges, especially have trainers on site. And the thing about it though is that a lot of people don't realize is that there's no training vetting system. I mean, in other words, I literally could hang a shingle out tomorrow and say, I do firearms training. And people who don't know would just believe me, and then they would show up, and I might teach them really, really bad things, because we've all seen that before. I mean, I've seen trainers who put students down range and shoot around them.
Yeah.
Because they say, "Oh, I want you to experience what gunfire sounds like down there." It's like, really?
Yeah.
And I told one guy like that, and I said, okay, now something happens and they accidentally get shot. And now the police car's here, and the paramedics, and the policeman walks up to you and says, what happened here? And you say, well, they were downrange and we were shooting. They were what?
Yeah. What?
Yeah. And you're going to learn what it's like to have handcuffs on. So, I mean, I think that, and you're right. We always say you should seek training, well, how do you find training? What do I mean, I think it's as simple as if you live in a certain area, Dr. Google will help you type in firearms trainers near me, right? If you're lucky, you'll come up with half a dozen different places. It might be a standalone guy who's got his own range. They're pretty rare these days. More than likely, it'll be a gun store with an indoor range. And they have on-site firearms trainers. And this is where the onus is on you. I mean, you really have to go and talk to them and ask what their experience is, and, where did they get their training? I mean, that's the only way to do it. And the problem is, what I see is that if you're a novice shooter, then anything they say is going to sound right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's like shopping for a car. You need to shop several places if you have that luxury. And then you're going to bump into somebody who just seems like they know what they're doing. We all know them, these trainers that have this certain sense of calm, and they speak with quiet authority, except they're also very welcoming and patient, and all of those things should be part. If you could take your first class and they start by yelling at you, just unload your gun and put it back on the holster and leave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's an ego problem masquerading as an instructor, and fortunately it's not too widespread in the industry, but we've all seen them. And I think I've told the story before of we were doing some teaching behind another group, and we were in the changeover, and it was some older guys, and they were NRA instructors, and we were that day happened to be teaching an all-female class. And, we'd learned after a while that sometimes females just want to be with females. That's fine. So we did that. And these guys stood over there. Look at that little lady. And some of the women heard that. And for people that this is literally their first contact shooting a handgun, a couple of them wanted to leave. And, the person I was with, who was the range master, went over and said, what are you doing? What are you doing here? And it was just that chauvinistic, ego-driven, well, look at that little old lady there, she doesn't, that's too big of a gun for her. These guys, and I know them from being in the community, and they knew about this much more than the students did. So it's not like they were really experienced. And to me, that was the single worst time I'd ever seen an instructor behave towards students. And I thought, why are you even Well, I was going to say, why would you even want to be an instructor? The reason they want to be an instructor, so they could hitch up their pants and inflict their condescension on other people. And
It's true.
like Roy said, if you're dealing with people like that, just say thank you, hope the check clears, I'm out of here. So,
well, and you bring up many good points there, but I think one way out of this is if you're serious about it, is attend one of the sort of vetted schools, the Gunsites of the world. And, there are other ones. Some of them are regional around the country. And your best friend, though, even if you're attending a local class, is go online and read reviews, and if a lot of people say, wow, this was the best thing I could have ever done. They were nice. The equipment was good. They were patient with me. Well, it's like, okay, well, maybe that's a good idea. If there are no reviews, I would be suspicious of that, But I think you just believe your gut. Unfortunately, with new shooters, they are an open book. They're a sponge, right? So they go up to the counter at the gun store and they say, I see that you offer training, can you tell me what that is? Well, that's the magic point. So if they say, certainly I'd be happy to, what is it that you're looking for? Right? And you say, well, I'm a brand new shooter, and so I need to start from the beginning. I understand. We have a 2-hour introduction to shooting that, because you're going to get a sense of like, this is reasonable. This guy sounds nice. This shop is clean. The range looks good. I'm being made to feel welcome here, But if you go up there and the guy rolls his eyes, and says, well, every Friday we have a class. It's 6 hours. It's $199. You have to bring your own gun, bring your own holster, bring your own ammo. Thank you, but no thank you. Yeah, turn around and leave. I just helped somebody buy his first gun ever, and he's in another state. I talked him through it is all, and he had this exact question: what do I do? Don't know anything about this gun, and so I gave him a little bit of instruction on just things to be safe with it after you pick it up and stuff like that. And where he is an urban area, so he was able to find about 4 indoor ranges, and so he did exactly what we're talking about. He went to each one of them. And then he got back to me and he said, you know what? I found one I really liked. It was kind of like a log cabin, and I went inside and it was neat and orderly, and the people were really nice. And they actually took me on a tour of the range and showed me the rental guns they had and showed me the targets and showed me the reloads that I'm required to use when I shoot there, and made me feel really welcome. So I'm pretty comfortable. I'm going to go with them. And it's like,
that's great.
Success, you know? That's exactly how you should do it. Don't compromise,
Yep. Well, sitting here talking about it, it's hard for us. We've been immersed in this culture for literally decades, but probably one of the questions we'll get is, let's talk about the tiers of training, the levels of training. And it's pretty simple, really. You've got your local trainer, which typically, for a lot of folks, is gun shop. It may be 4-H. It may be, whomever, a local group that has local instructors. Often they're NRA certified instructors, and I'll talk about that in a second. But that's your local level. I would say the quality varies the most with this level. You'll have people that are really good, really experienced, really smart and patient, and all those great things Roy said. And then you'll have some people that are just unsafe and idiots and horrible people. And you tend to see those people at this level. So again, as you said, Roy, that's the key. Buyer beware. Do your research. Trust your gut. If this guy feels like a jerk when you're signing up for the class, he's probably not going to get better on range day. So you really need to be an experienced consumer. The next level is what they call an itinerant trainer. And there's a lot of these. They tend to be retired law enforcement or retired military, people that have put a lot of bullets down range and have had a lot of training experiences and a lot of real world experience. Because by the time you get to the point where you're hanging your shingle out and traveling the country and the world as a trainer, if you're an idiot or a jackass, you're not going to last very long at that. So if a guy's been doing it 15 years, that right there kind of vets them as they've got some kind of worth in the world of training. Either that or they're pulling the greatest scam ever. But generally, if you survive 2-3 years on the road teaching full time, it means you've got something of value for enough folks that you can make a business out of it. And then probably the top tier is the academy. So Gunsite is the world's oldest and largest shooting school, because I was just staying with Ken Campbell and I heard it 50 times, but it's true. To me, it's the mothership. It's where everything else flows from. But you've got Clint Smith and Thunder Ranch. I'm not sure that one out by Vegas now. It's gone through a couple of iterations. SIG Academy. There's a number of these academies that if you're doing it full time and you have a physical location with full-time trainers, again, nothing's a guarantee and there's no certification, but if they're doing that and they've done it for a number of years, they're probably really good at what they do. So that's kind of the way, if you're looking at training, and I would suggest start out, I wouldn't suggest first time spend all the money and time and energy to get to Gunsite as your first class. If you can, that's great. You will have a life-changing experience. But start with that weekend class at the local range with somebody you feel like is going to be a decent instructor. So you at least know which end of the gun to point down range, how not to, put it in your ear and pull the trigger, get those basics down, and then kind of work your way up the tiers. Your thoughts on this kind of tier structure and where the different trainers fall?
You're right. It's more of a crapshoot when you're talking locally, but that doesn't mean there's not good local trainers, because
Exactly.
I mean, I have some in this Joplin area. They're well respected by people. They tend to be on the modest side. They don't wave their arms and yell. That's a real keynote. If they're waving their arms and yelling, you have to leave. That second tier, though, the retired law enforcement, retired, whatever, they can be a crapshoot, though, because they tend to get fanboys.
Exactly.
And so there'll be a guy, and I mean, I've attended him. You go there, and Tiger McHugh is like this very soft-spoken, very knowledgeable, very supportive, very much a teacher, and then you get a guy who's a former SEAL, and they come out on the range and they run like a military unit, and there's like yelling at you, and you will reholster on my command, and well, if it's Sam and Susie Homemaker just wants to learn how to shoot their new Taurus revolver, those guys can be intimidating. But having said that, now they may also have the fan club with them where they're all geared up and tacticaled up and shooting, and everything. And that's fine. If that gives them something to do, they should go do that. But don't think that's how it is or how it needs to be. After the first Gulf War, and I got to know Clint Smith, he had just barely started Thunder Ranch, and he said, mark my word, he said, when these guys come back, we're going to see an explosion in tactical training schools. I mean, because at the time it was really Gunsite and Thunder Ranch. I mean, there might have been one or two other ones, but those were the two. They kind of wrote the book. They were the format. And sure enough, as the first Gulf War happened, the second Gulf War happened, the SHOT Show got flooded with AR-15s and body armor and night vision gear and all that. And then all of these little one-man schools that kind of you're talking about, the second tier kind of, all started to open up. And most of them were traveling. And so what they would do is they would contact local ranges and say, I will go there and do a 1-day class, a 2-day class, a 3-day rifle class. And then you invite the people, I show up, I teach, I get a percentage, and then it's on to the next one, right? So the only defense you have there is good vetting. And so, you need to search for students, see if they have a website, see what kind of comments they have, and then just leap off the cliff and go. But I would definitely stay locally if you really are brand new to it. Because as Brent said, I think if you went to Gunsite and took what's their first class called? The 250?
250.
You would have to have a good gun and a good holster, ammunition. And to me, yes, you could show up there never having fired the gun at all. But I think if you had at least some experience, and that would be a much better experience for you. Either way, if you're brand new, I would really recommend that you seek training out locally, probably someplace with an indoor range. Just get, your gun handling skills up, get sight picture, trigger squeeze, understand how you put a target up on a target backing board. When do you pick up your brass? How do you carry spare ammunition when you're on the range? You just learn all those basic things. And then, you can learn a lot of that with one class. But then once you get that foundation, now you'll know either you want to go more, right? Or maybe that was enough. So now you take whoever local guy's second class, and they usually have 2, 3, 4, 5 classes, they may do 2 handguns, and then they may have introduction to the AR-15, and then they may have introduction to the combat shotgun, right? So, and if they have weekend competitions at their indoor range, casual, shoot the steel plates kind of stuff, I would recommend that too, because you'll learn a lot.
And let's talk about this kind of that middle tier and qualifications, because you're exactly right that after we've had a shooting war, a lot of the guys that got to put a lot of rounds down range in real world think, well, but what do I know? Oh, I know how to tear stuff up and I know how to shoot. So
that's the thing. Yeah.
I can't find a job tearing stuff up. So I'm going to become a traveling trainer. And again, some of those guys are great. Some of those guys are only still in business because of their fanboys. And, when I start talking or I see things posted on the internet, if it's, well, he was a Navy SEAL and he was Delta and he was, a PJ and a Ninja Squirrel, and that means nothing, because the higher you rise on that hierarchy in the military, in terms of operational, you probably have more training opportunities, you have more actual shooting opportunities, but that doesn't mean you know how to instruct. And the other caution I would make is in the civilian, meaning civilian law enforcement, non-military, if it's one thing to clear a house by tossing in a couple of frags and doing a mag dump, that doesn't go so well when you're at the supermarket and you've got to pull your revolver and defend your life. So make sure the person, they may be a Delta Ninja Secret Squirrel with 1,500 kills, but if they don't understand we're not in Afghanistan or Syria or wherever, that skill set, the trigger pull certainly does, but everything around it doesn't apply. So you've got to be careful of that, and don't get enamored with Navy SEALs. So don't just assume because a guy's a former SEAL, that means that he knows what he's doing. Other special ops, again, you just got to be a little bit educated and see through the hype. But that's where the hype tends to cloud people's judgment, especially if you're younger and less experienced. Well, this guy's a 7-tour Navy SEAL. Well, that didn't mean he hit anything. It just mean he didn't get hit and return fire. So be aware of that. And as far as law enforcement goes, if a guy is experienced, great. But again, make sure that they can teach, because I've known a lot of guys, as has Roy, that are, firearms instructors in law enforcement. And again, they're not the person I would send my daughter or my wife to in a class.
Well, and you brought up a good point, which I've had a lot of people say, oh, my friend who's a cop says that I should buy this guy, and he said he'll show me how to shoot.
No.
There are cops who know how to shoot, and there are cops who are trainers on their agency, and they're good teachers, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you find one, count your blessings. But just because they're a cop doesn't mean they know about guns. And the whole, it's like in a home defense shooting, people have this imaginary picture in their brain, and is that they wake up at nighttime and the house is dark and they go down the hallway and there's this shadowy figure backlit standing with a knife held up like this, right? And then they magically have their gun and they shoot him and he falls down. Mm-hmm. And then the police come and they shake his hand and they say what a hero he is and all that, And so it's never like that. But people are enamored with the Navy SEALs, and they're enamored with that sort of the idea of being a hero and things like that, And so you need to not do that. I mean, concentrate on don't shoot yourself in the foot. I was attending a basic handgun class at Thunder Ranch in the middle 90s, I suppose. And there's nothing wrong with attending a basic class, even if you already attended a basic class. It's a really good idea because it gets you well grounded in the basics again. And as Clint used to say, advanced tactics are just the basics applied. And he's right. But I remember we were on the range and it was gravel. And I think I've told this story once or twice before, but I'm going to tell it again because it proves a point. And that is, it was like the end of day one. So really at this point, it's how to draw your gun, how to load it, how to manipulate it, how to shoot the target at 7 yards. How to scan a little bit. Don't shoot your neighbor. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. That kind of stuff. And we had a lot of really first timers in the class. And so I was talking to Clint and he was like, hey, yeah, this, and we're doing that. And this, we go crunch, 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 crunch. This guy comes up and he had already established himself that first day. He was a geek, nerd, wannabe idiot.
Yeah. That guy.
Yeah. And he's like all geared up and everything, 17 magazines and all that. And he said he was waiting. You could tell he was like almost out of breath because he couldn't wait anymore. Finally, he just blurted out, Mr. Smith, when are we going to do like the kick in doors and, like roll and get up and engage multiple targets and all, I mean, I think I think it's really important. I want to know that stuff. And I remember Clint just like sighed and he looked at me and he looked at this guy and he said, what do you do for a living? Because, of course, most of these people were bank tellers and who knows what. Nobody here was a ninja, right? And I kid you not, this guy was an Arthur Murray dance instructor. And I didn't even believe there was such a thing, but he was, right? And if you picture that in your mind, it's exactly what he was. And Clint kind of smiled. He says, I'll make you a deal. Let's just concentrate on learning how not to shoot yourself or your neighbor. And let's concentrate on learning how to load your gun safely and unload your gun safely. And we'll worry about that other stuff later. And it was like dejected, turn around, crunch, 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 back to the thing. But I saw that repeated many times, And so just if you want to do that, that's fine. But you get the basics in, and then learn how to do it from somebody reputable.
Well, it's very much like driving a car. You wouldn't throw the keys to your Ferrari to your 16-year-old who just got a driver's license that day. Say, go have fun. It happens occasionally, and then you see it on the news because of what happens. So, get some experience, maybe take another driving class, then you go to Bondurant, and, then you're, and your weekend racing. It's the same thing with guns. You got to start out crawl, walk, run, reputable instructors. And, my mantra is I'm always training. I'm taking classes all the time. I'm forever a student because, as we said, it's a perishable skill and you'll always learn something, even if it is, I'm never going to go around that guy or that class ever again. But you will pick something up and it reinforces the good skills you have. And in closing, one thing I will say, the hardest thing for a student to do, and this doesn't matter whether you're a complete novice or you've got a lot of time under your belt, is the idea that if they're not being safe, walk away. And the instances of putting students down, but usually it's more subtle than that. It's an instructor that will sweep the class with his muzzle, and it's unloaded. I don't care. I don't want to be swept by a muzzle. Now, the counterpoint to that is the guys that when the gun is fully taken apart and go, well, the barrel was pointing my direction. it's fine. It's okay. But when instructors demonstrate things and they point at the students without using a red gun, a plastic gun, something like that, a special situation. But when they're casually just sweeping the crowd, or you see students that are continually sweeping and doing stupid stuff like that and nothing's being done about it, your highest duty in life at that point is to say, I'm out of here. I'm done. And if the instructor is reputable, they'll pull you aside and go, what's the problem? Well, this happened. Okay. If it's a student, I'll take care of it. If it was me, oh my gosh, that's horrible. Stay around for a few minutes and we'll correct this. But if they, well, I didn't see it, I didn't do that, you need to be out of there. So,
well, I'd like two more things and then I'll be done. Is first of all, I don't mean to beat up the certified NRA fire instructors, okay? But the reality is, if you were certified 47 years ago, your training isn't current. It's as simple as that. Would you want a doctor to operate on you whose last operation he did was 47 years ago? No. You want the guy who's current, who does the work now, who practices all the time. So having said that, that doesn't mean there's not good NRA firearms instructors, because there are, and I've met some, and they're very dedicated people, and they take regular training, and they are what we need. And so if you know some, Google NRA firearms instructor in your area and see what turns up. You may get up to be lucky. The other thing I've noticed is people say, like they say, oh, I bought a concealed weapons permit gun, and, show it to me or something. I'll say, well, that's really good. Have you had any training? Oh, yeah, I have. It's like, okay, what training did you have? And I can't tell you the number of times I hear, well, I did my hunter safety training when I was 16 years old. So I'm trained now for firearms. So, it's like,
you are a gunfighter now, aren't you?
Yeah, you are not trained for firearms. As a matter of fact, many hunter safety classes, you don't even shoot a gun. You don't even pick up a real gun.
Yeah. Well, let me just interrupt a sidebar there. These states where you have to take mandatory training before you can get your permit or buy a gun, no.
Oh,
it is lowest common denominator. It is not training. It is a minimum certification. So don't tout that as your training experience for having a gun.
Yeah.
So.
And like this, because I also hear that with people who take a CCW class, because they'll say, well, in order to get your permit, you have to take this 2-hour, proof of competency for CCW, and like you say, no, that's not training. Because I know people who show up there with a Ruger 22 pistol, but their carry gun is a Glock 19, that they've never fired. So that's all. Just be sensible about it. And I'm sorry, NRA certified firearms instructors, but I think it's also safe for me to say, who you are. Okay. And I would say that same thing about anybody who calls himself a trainer, but isn't current. But it is a challenge, though. If you're a brand new shooter, that would be a hard thing to try to find. I know I've helped countless people to do it, and it's not always easy. But just stay the course and don't compromise.
Yep. Well, I think the whole going full circle back to our title, training is gatekeeping. I think the people that feel that way are the ones who either have unrealistic expectations, which there's a few of those, but I think mostly it's that, okay, I went down to the local gun store and the 26-year-old, well, I've had lots of training and, you need this gun and you need that and you need to learn and make sure you got your plate carrier, and they walk away going, no, this is bad. So I hope that we get the point across that there's those guys and a few gals like that in the industry, but there's also a lot of folks that really want to be a teacher. And there's a difference between an instructor and a teacher. And if you can find a teacher of firearms and then moving on into tactics, hold that person with the greatest love and respect, because those are the people that you want to associate with, and find more of them and continue your lifelong training journey. So any final thoughts there, Roy?
Well, if you do that, And then someday you'll be helping somebody else with their new gun experiences, because you can say, I understand, I was there, and here's how you do it. So that works out. So, all right, make your comments. I'll read them and respond to them.
Well, I think we may get some questions too. So leave questions down if you're watching us on YouTube. Of course, you can reach out via email, editor@gunspodcast.us, and we'll do our best to answer them. And those are kind of comments that I do try to answer, and Roy certainly does when people have questions, honest questions about, well, how do I do this? Or this guy said I need a plate carrier for my intro to CCW. No, that's not not necessary, kids. So we'll do our best to give you our experience of having been to an awful lot of classes and having some real world experience and being trainers ourselves. So anyway, before we go, of course, we need to get a quick word in from our sponsor, Tango Down.
Visit tangodown.com to explore the full lineup and sign up for email updates so you don't miss what's next. Tango Down, combat gear without peer.
And I often like to mention, make sure you go to gunsmagazine.com, sign up for our daily email newsletters. You can get all this great gun goodness sent directly to your email inbox, including gunspodcast.us and all sorts of other good stuff for your favorite writers, gunsmagazine.com, and also, of course, AmericanHandgunner.com, our sister publication. So I think we covered it all. Hopefully we didn't upset too many people, but we're just telling it like we see it and based on earning our gray hair. So find a good instructor, shop around, and be a smart student before you plunk down that hard-earned money. But get training, get professional training. So anyway, I am Brent Wheat, the host of Guns Podcast U.S., of course, along with my co-host, Roy Huntington. And as we always say, we wish you to now get out there and get shooting.